Savior, Jesus Christ. You know, we're at a time where we are rebuilding our lives. We are experiencing restoration in different areas of our lives. People are folding their sleeves to get their lives back and to get everything into the state where whatever they had endeavored to do begins to work and it begins to revive. But I've come to see that one of the greatest frustrations and something that causes pain in life, it's a lack of a sense of sight. I'm going to explain what I mean. In most cases, we want to do certain things. We are convinced that it is time to put things together. It is time to move from the place where we are to a better place. We need to be in a productive state where everything that was not working begins to work again. But in most cases, the struggle or the problem is not the absence of resources. You will discover that resources are always available. But the problematic area is the area of seeing. It is possible to have resources around you, your help available around you, because God has promised us that we should not be afraid. He will help us. In other words, help is always available. But the problem is that even when the help is there, we don't see it most of the time. And that's what brings the frustration in our lives. We are going to look at a number of stories in the Bible that show us that people were not frustrated because help was not there. But the frustration in people was that they did not see the help in front of them. The first case is chapter 12 of the book of Acts. We discover that Peter, the church had been praying for Peter. And God intervened, and Peter came out of the jail. And Peter was knocking at the door where people were praying and interceding for him. And unfortunately, Peter, or the people who were praying in particular, the intercessors that were praying for Peter, did not see Peter even when he had arrived. There was a young girl there by the name of Rhoda. Rhoda keeps on knocking, telling them that Peter is here. Peter was knocking, and Rhoda was telling them, Peter is here. But the people did not believe. They thought Rhoda was hallucinating. They thought she was seeing the angel of Peter, and yet Peter was there. So the problem was not in the answer. God had already provided the answer. But the problem was in the people not seeing, not realizing that now our answer, the answer to our prayers, has been delivered to us. It is my prayer that in this season, God may open our eyes to see when our help has come. Because the problem is not necessarily the absence of the answers, the absence of the resources, the absence of the help. The help is available all the time. As God lives, help will always be available. The answers to what you are dealing with now are available. So your prayer must be focused on the fact that I need to see. The psalmist is heard saying, "Open thou mine eyes, that I may behold the wondrous things out of your word." We saw in chapter 9 of the book of Acts, there was a man. This man was an Ethiopian eunuch. He was from the feasts of Israel. He was going back home. This was a very, very prominent man. A man who was entrusted with the treasuries of the queen of Ethiopia. Now, he is on a carriage, or he is on a, on this, yeah, he was on the carriage, pulled by horses. Now, as he was moving, he was sitting there and he was reading Psalms 53. The Spirit of God touches Philip. And Philip began to run next to this man and asked him, "Do you understand what you are reading?" And he says, "How can I understand lest somebody explains this to me?" You know, some kind of blindness sometimes can be a lack of understanding. This man was reading. Like it is possible for many people, for many of us, to read without understanding. If you don't understand, you won't know what to do about your situation. But when you begin to understand clearly, you begin to take that knowledge and use it and apply it in your life to change your circumstances. So when we are talking about blindness, we are not talking about physical blindness. We are talking about not seeing a way through out of your situation and never seeing where you are supposed to be. Others could call it a lack of vision. You don't see clearly where you are going. You don't see your way out of your situation. Therefore, one of the problems, the greatest problem, it's not the lack of resources. It's not the lack of help. Your help is available. God is available to help you. And there are many people with wisdom and understanding in the area that you are walking to that can help you, enlighten you to move from the place where you are to a higher place. So you will discover that your problem is not the absence of resources. You are surrounded by resources. You are surrounded by answers. You are surrounded by help. But the issue is, do you see? Now, so the psalmist is saying, look, I am reading here, but I ask you to open my eyes that I may behold the wondrous things. So the psalmist is saying, there are wondrous things that can help me, that can see me out of my plight. But I don't see them. I need you to open my eyes so that I will see these wondrous things that are there to help me. Now, the problem of the psalmist was not the availability of answers. The answers were available. But it's like he is suggesting that there is a level in me where I don't see I have an impediment. I have a problem of not seeing this answer. He is saying there are wondrous things out of the word. But I need help to see these wondrous things that are in the word. Now, therefore, our prayer should be based on the fact that I know you have answers available for me. You have surrounded me with help. You have surrounded me with answers. But my problem is that I don't see the answers. Now, may you open my eyes that I may see. Now, I want us to go to these verses that I want to talk about. Now, I want us to look at Mark, the book of Mark. It is after Matthew, chapter 8. And we are going to look at verse 22 to 26. There is a story of a blind man. Now, Jesus arrives in that place. Let me read from verse 22. Then he came to Bethesda, and they brought a blind man to him and begged him to touch him. So he took the blind man by hand and led him out of the town. And when he had spit on his eyes and put his hands on him, he asked him if he saw everything. Verse 24. And he looked up and said, this is the blind man now. He looked up and said, I see men like trees walking. You see, this man saw, but he had received just a degree of seeing, and he was not seeing properly. He said, what I see at this point, I see men moving around as trees. Men are not trees. But this man was seeing men moving around like trees. Others have a degree of seeing, but they have not totally seen. They have degrees in seeing. They call it 20/20 vision, where your eyes are seeing clearly. You know, some of us that put on these glasses, maybe to see far, or maybe to correct whatever needs to be corrected. In most cases, those people do not have 20/20 vision. When you talk 20/20 vision, you are saying this person is seeing clearly. I am asking that God may give you clarity, a clear vision, where you will see clearly how to come out of your predicament and how to get to your destiny. This man was not seeing properly. This man's sight was partial. He did not see with clarity. Whatever he was seeing, he did not see it clearly. He says, I see men. It suggests that he was seeing people. But his vision caused him to see men moving like trees. Now, it is my prayer that you don't only see your resources, but you see them clearly. You don't see trees, men moving around like trees, but you see men clearly. Now, let's go back to the book of Mark. Verse 25 now. After asking this man, and this man answered, and said, I see men moving around like trees. Verse 25 says, then he put his hands on his eyes again and made him look up. And he was restored, and he saw everyone clearly. He saw everyone clearly. From seeing men moving around as trees, with the second touch from Jesus, he saw everyone clearly. May this season come with clarity in your seeing. May you understand what to do. May you see your way out of your situation clearly and the way to your destiny very clearly. Not partially. Not like men walking as trees. So the prayer is that, Lord, you physically touched that man 2 times. The first time you touched him, he saw men as trees. But my prayer is that in the spirit, you may touch me. Give me the second touch that will cause me to see everyone clearly, or to see all my answers clearly. The help is available. One, you need to ask God, Lord, cause me to see. This man did not decide to be born blind, or did not decide to have the kind of blindness that he had. I want to believe that this man had his sense of sight intact before, but along the way he lost his sense of sight. Now, in this instance, Jesus was restoring the sense of sight to this man. He touched him the first time. The interesting thing was that he took him by hand out of the town, out of the people that were saying it will be impossible for you to see. He pulled him out of the group, because a town suggests a group of people. You can never form a town unless there are people. And it also suggests the way of thinking of people. You will discover that every city and every town, the people there are thinking differently. Now, Jesus pulls this man out of the town, and he begins the process of restoring the sight of this man. You need to be careful. Don't stay in a place where they are speaking impossibility. Among people that say it can never happen. Connect with Jesus for your sight to be restored, so that you understand and you know where you are going and how to come out of your present predicament. Sight, seeing, understanding what you should do in order to come out of your present predicament. Suddenly this man receives a second touch, and after that he saw everyone clearly. Let that be your portion. Now, I want us to look at Genesis 21. In Genesis 21, it's a story that we know. The birth of Isaac, a child that Abraham waited for a long time, happened. Isaac was born and he began to grow. But prior to that, Sarah and Abraham conjured a plan just to have a child. There was a servant of Sarah, Hagar, an Egyptian. So Sarah, because of frustration, you know, when you don't see your way through out of a situation, frustration comes in. Sarah is frustrated. And because of her frustration, she goes to Abraham. She said, maybe God was saying, a plan can be made for this to happen. Suddenly, she suggests that Abraham sleeps with her servant. Any child that is born out of that will be her child. A boy is born. His name is Ishmael. And after Ishmael, Sarah at her old age became pregnant, and Isaac is born. Now, you know, when children are growing together, a lot of things happen. Now, in this instance, this young lad by the name of Ishmael was seen scoffing. He was scoffing at Isaac. And Sarah got enraged and then said to Abraham, send away this bondwoman, this slave, with her child Ishmael. The Bible reveals to us that those words, I'm reading from verse 1 to 19 in chapter 21. The Bible reveals to us that those words were not good for Abraham. Abraham did not take kind to those words. It was very, very difficult for him. But then God intervened and said to Abraham, Abraham, whatever Sarah tells you to do, do it. Don't worry about this young man, Ishmael. As she's saying, send him off, send him off. In verse 12, particular, of chapter 21, which I want us to read. But God said to Abraham, do not let it be displeasing in your sight because of the lad, or because of your bondservant, or your bondwoman. Whatever Sarah has said to you, listen to her voice. For in Isaac your seed shall be called. The proper child through which I will channel the blessing, the seed for the promises that I have made to you, are going to come through Isaac. Don't worry about Ishmael. Now, and then he says in verse 13, yet I will also make a nation out of the son of the bondwoman, because he is your seed. He says, Abraham, don't worry. Even Ishmael comes from your loins. Even Ishmael is your seed. I will make a nation out of Israel. He says, out of Ishmael, don't worry. As much as the promise was between you and Sarah, and Isaac is going to carry out, or the promise is going to manifest clearly in Isaac. He is the seed of the great things that I want to do in you. Verse 14, so Abraham rose early in the morning, and he sent off Sarai. She departed, and she wandered in the wilderness. The only provision that Abraham had given to Hagar was a bottle of water. And when she was in the desert, or while she was in the desert, she exhausted the provision that Abraham had given her, the bottle of water. And now the Bible uses a language, it says, a place, a bow shot, which was about 100 meters. 100 meters she decided, because she realized now that all the resources, let me put it clear, she realized that the resources that I had are depleted. I might as well leave this young man about 100 meters and go away from him and let him die without me seeing. And then she started crying. And God was looking. I want to tell somebody that in your times of crying, because you don't see your way out of the situation, God is looking and seeing. But the interesting thing was that God heard the cry of the lad because he had a covenant with Abraham. And this lad was the seed of Abraham. When this boy cried, instead of listening to Hagar, he listened to this boy. And he sent an angel to talk to Hagar because he heard the cry of the lad. You know, when you are a child of God and you have a covenant with God, your cry touches the heavens. Suddenly God brought an answer into this situation. Now the angel said to Hagar, let me read from verse 17. And God heard the voice of the lad. Then the angel of God called to Hagar out of heaven and said to her, What ails thee? What is your problem, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the lad, which was the voice of Ishmael, because Ishmael was a seed of his covenant friend Abraham. God heard him. Verse 18 says, Arise, this is the instruction from heaven coming through the angel. Arise, lift up the lad and hold him with your hands, for I will make him a great nation. Now I want us to look at verse 19. This is what verse 19 is saying. And God opened her eyes. And God opened her eyes. Remember, Hagar is crying. Hagar has left the boy to die. Suddenly, in that desert, where Hagar has been crying, where Hagar has reached a point of despair, where Hagar thought the boy was going to die, your boy, the lad, might be the business that you are peddling, might be whatever you are doing. We are involved in so many things that we are trying to build that have to do with our vision and our purpose here on earth. Situation. I don't know what your boy is or your baby is, but God has given you a dream, a vision, and things that you are supposed to do. But you are in a point now where it looks like this vision is about to die. This dream is about to die. And Hagar was in that position. Now, when God is ready to help you, He will open your eyes to see where your help is. Let's read verse 19. And God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. Now, could it be telling us that Hagar was crying all the time, and yet help was around her? I think it's very clear that Hagar was crying, and yet the well had been there all along. Her problem was that she was not seeing. May that not be your portion, that you don't access your help. May God open your eyes so that you see your own well. The well of your help is there, but the problem is that you don't see it. Now, her tears dried up because the solution to her problem was available. It was made available by God. It had been there all along. Then she went and filled the bottle or the skin with water and gave the lad to drink. Your answer is available. May God help you to see in Jesus' name. Amen.